Hi, welcome to part 2. Okay, let's get started. Number 40. Guess who's coming to dinner? Stanley Kramer is undoubtedly my favorite filmmaker ever. I have not seen one film by him that I have disliked. This one is probably his most famous. It's about a young couple who want to get married. What's so interesting about that? Well, this takes place back in the 1960s, back when racism was still going on. A black man wants to marry a white woman. Of course, her parents, played by Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy, are against her marrying him. This topic was a big controversy back in 1967. It's very interesting how the plot rolls around Sidney Poitier and the parents. Spencer Tracy was sick during the making of this movie, but you can't really tell. That's how good of an actor he is. The funny thing is, when Poitier's parents learn he's marrying a white woman, they aren't happy about it either. The movie was one of the first dramedies ever made, and still one of the best. Number 39. The Apartment. Billy Wilder has made too many good movies to count, and is my second favorite filmmaker. He ranges from smart and witty comedies to on-the-edge-of-your-seat dramas. This is a comedy with Jack Lemmon playing an everyday office worker who hates his job. He works overtime because he lets his bosses use his apartment to meet women, without their wives knowing. He gives his other boss, Fred McMurray, the apartment to use for the night. Jack decides he wants to go on a date with Shirley MacLaine, a girl he's been eyeing for a while. Unknowingly, his boss takes Shirley to the apartment and leaves her there. From there, Jack and Shirley establish a relationship, and lots of jokes are made. For an old movie, it's still pretty funny. At the time, it had a really raunchy sense of humor. It's tame nowadays, but it's still pretty raunchy to make it funny enough. It's one of the best comedies ever made. Number 38. It's a Wonderful Life. No question about it. Frank Capra's best film ever made. This movie had classic written all over it. Just for the hell of it, I'll explain the plot. Jimmy Stewart plays George Bailey, an adventure seeker who can't seem to get out of his hometown. We become familiar with this town quickly, the people in it and the places around it. We watch George from a little boy all the way up to a suicide attempt. An angel named Clarence comes down to save his life. George wishes that he was never born, and we get to see what life would be like if he didn't exist. My favorite character is mean old Mr. Potter, played by Lionel Barrymore. You may remember him from You Can't Take It With You. I'd explain why I love this movie, but I believe I wouldn't say anything that hasn't already been said. But what I can say is that this is indeed a wonderful movie. Number 37. Creature from the Black Lagoon. A lot of you are screaming right now, saying, how did this beat It's a Wonderful Life? Well, it was a hard decision, but this movie is the one that got me interested in horror films. The creature's first kill scene was the first thing that ever scared me as a kid. I still remember the sound of it roaring as it slayed its victims. Anyway, let's actually talk about the plot, because you have no idea how many people I've talked to who don't even know what this movie's about. It's about archaeologists who find a skeleton of what they believe is the missing link. They think the rest of the skeleton is in a lagoon not far from where they found it. From there, the creature stalks them one by one, and they try to survive. The movie was one of the last horror films to depend mostly on suspense, but it works very well. A lot of people stayed out of the water because of Jaws, but this made me stay out of the water. Number 36. Silence of the Lambs. The first horror film to win Best Picture had to make my list. It's just so good. Anthony Hopkins gives a great performance as the psychopath Hannibal Lecter. He modeled his voice after Katharine Hepburn, who was in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Okay, the movie is about Jodie Foster trying to solve the case of a serial killer. She thinks the only way to solve the case is to get into the mind of a psychopath, so she goes to get help from the man-eater Hannibal Lecter. From there, it's just a series of events. Both Hopkins and Foster received Oscars for their performances, and I'm glad they received them. They deserved them. You believe every word Hopkins says. You believe that he is this guy who's out of his mind, looking at people and fantasizing about eating them. You can't help but get hypnotized by looking in his eyes. Oh, God, those eyes. Number 35. Misery. I read the book, and they did a great job adapting this. They made very obvious changes, but to be honest, I don't mind them that much. James Caan plays Paul Sheldon, author of the famous Misery series. After finishing his latest book, he gets in a car crash and is saved by a woman who happens to be his number one fan, played by Kathy Bates. She reads his manuscript for the last Misery book and holds him hostage until he writes another book unending the series. Believe me, you want to listen to this girl, because this bitch is off her rocker. She's so good, she won an Oscar for her role. Funny. Her last name is Bates, just like the killer in Psycho. Makes me wonder. Number 34. BenHur. William Wyler's epic about Judah Ben-Hur is great and a monumental picture in history. It still holds the record for most Oscars won by a single motion picture, 11. Titanic and Lord of the Rings also got 11, but Ben-Hur got it first, so it still holds the record. It's about a Jewish prince who reunites with his best friend Masala. They grew up together as kids. They both wanted to be leaders of Rome. Well, Masala left to become a leader. Years later, he comes back, and they both have different outlooks on life. Ben-Hur sees the cruelty that these leaders are capable of and decides that he doesn't want to be a ruler. Masala has been consumed by the surroundings of these rulers and has become as evil as them. After they see the differences in each other, they aren't friends anymore. Ben-Hur's sister gets into trouble, and Ben-Hur tries to explain that it was an accident. But Masala convinces the leaders of Rome that his sister tried to kill the king of Rome. Ben-Hur is sent into slavery. From there, he tries to make it back home. The movie is 3-hour-long eye candy with outstanding sets and characters. Like others, my favorite scene is the chariot race. It's so spectacular and nail-biting to watch. It's so cool to know these aren't CGI effects, that they actually got people to do this. The genre describes how good this movie is. Epic. Number 33. The Lost World. This is the first movie that had stop motion in it. It predates King Kong and is a spectacle that has to be seen to be believed. Scientists think that dinosaurs still exist in Africa. They go to a plateau and see that dinosaurs still roam the earth. From there, they fight. The movie plays out a lot like King Kong, but remember, this is before King Kong. They bring a brontosaurus back and it goes on a rampage. The person who animated King Kong, Willis O'Brien, also animated the dinosaurs in this film. In fact, he invented stop motion. This movie is based off a book written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote the Sherlock Holmes books. When Doyle saw a part of the movie, he thought that the dinosaurs were documentary footage, and he started amok with scientists everywhere. That's how groundbreaking the effects were back then. Number 32. Halloween. John Carpenter redefined the slasher genre with this excellent achievement in film. Michael Myers kills his sister as an 8-year-old. Years later, he escapes his asylum and begins killing teenagers in the suburban town of Haddonfield. Our main character is Laurie Strode, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, who is easy to agree with. You feel like if she was a real person, you'd get along with her really well. Her friends are total stereotypes that you always see in the movies. Donald Pleasance is fantastic as Dr. Loomis. You believe every word he says, as if this guy was a real killer. Michael Myers is the creepiest slasher villain ever. Every time he's on screen, chills go down your back. Your teeth start chattering when that music starts to play. You know he's there, you just don't know where. He could be anywhere, around the corner, the other block, or even in your own bedroom as you sleep at night. Number 31. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Hate all you want. This is my favorite out of all the Indiana Jones movies. Indiana Jones gets stuck in India, and he learns of the magic rocks that have power. He travels to the Temple of Doom to not only get the rocks, but free all the kids that are stuck there. This is undoubtedly darker than all the other Indiana Jones movies, but that's why I like it. It raises the stakes and makes it more suspenseful to watch. Everyone hates Short Round and Willie, but I like these characters. They are comic relief, but for me it works. I don't care if you hate it, I like it. That's it for now. Stay tuned for part 3.